In this video, I'm going to be going over using skills with BFFless. I'm also going to touch upon using the MCP server as well, along with those skills. Here I have github.com/BFFlist/skills. This is the main repository which I publish these skills to. And what the skills are going to do is they're going to provide Claude, in this case, my LLM, the more knowledge about how to use BFFless. So let's go ahead and look at how to install those skills. Okay, so I recommend using Claude. It seems to be my favorite provider, and using the Claude marketplace as well. So I'm going to go ahead and install the skills using the marketplace. And just give you a quick demo of where I'm at. Right now I have a dummy website where I'm running on localhost, and it's just a Vite website. Haven't done anything to it. It's just a Hello World Vite website. And I'm going to open up Claude at this level. And if I were to look at skills and list them out, I have some superpowers and some other skills installed. I'm not going to go into that, but what I don't have is the BFFlist skills. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this first command. I'm going to add the BFFlist marketplace. And so it added that marketplace. And after I do that, I need to install the plugin from that marketplace. So now I install the plugin, and I can install it in my user scope, or I can install it in my project scope. I'm going to install this in my user scope because I use BFFless for most projects that I work on. And so the difference is, if it's at your project scope, the files, the content, the documentation of that skill itself is located in your project directory. And unless you use like git ignore, it's going to be checked into your Git repo, which is fine. I think that makes sense in some cases. But in this case, I don't want to have many different versions of the BFFlist skill across all of my repos. One at the user level is fine. Once you install it, you have to type reload plugins. And so now if I look at BFFlist, it's got all the BFFlist skills that I need. And so I can ask it questions about, like, can you tell me information about how BFFlist pipelines work, and plan a and high level summary of what I would do to use BFFless. So it should invoke the skill now that it knows about it. There it is. First it loaded BFFless, loaded the skill. Let's see if it loaded just the generic BFFless skill, and now it loaded the pipeline skill directly. So now it has all the information about BFFless and pipelines, and there's all this other context that I can use when working on a BFFless website to have Claude know this really rich information. Next I'm going to go into skills within a BFFless pipeline itself, because I also use that quite a bit. So let's switch back over to here. I have this app called Studio, and Studio is a tool I use for post-production video editing. And here, for example, I have a pipeline that calls Claude. I tell it to use this tutorial style architecture and design, and I'm basically saying draft a prompt. And so I'm calling a pipeline on BFFless, And the response I get back is a really rich prompt, which I then feed later into another AI endpoint that generates the actual image. So it's sort of a two-step approach. But the point is, I'm using skills to have a lot of extra context, so I can have images and prompts that align to a specific theme or branding of for that prompt. And so the prompt has real good direction with only a little bit of user input because I've defined that direction once. So let's go ahead and go into that. If we go into apps and I go look at my pipelines, I have this studio, and then I should have draft prompt in here somewhere, thumbnail draft, right? And actually, let's go ahead and enable debugging on it so we can look at how it works. But what it's doing here is we have, it's just to make this clear, studio, let's see. Enable all skills. Here we go. So I have image prompts. And image prompts, what I've done here is this part of the pipeline is using the AI SDK from Vercel with a high-level system prompt saying, you write a single image generation prompt for Google Nano Banana that becomes a YouTube video thumbnail. And I give it high-level direction. I pass in the message from the user, which is this message right here. So I can customize it a little bit, you know, if I want. It's also being passed in a lot of other information about the video itself, which is more about like what the studio is. So here's the message. It's the title of the video. It's the description. It's the script itself, and then the creator wishes are the notes, and that's what this is right here. So that's only part of it. So the thumbnail is actually generated from the whole content of this video. So it gets this, it gets this, it gets the full script, and so the thumbnail generator, the prompt that I'm generating, is basically getting all sorts of really rich content. But in addition to that, here's where the skill comes in. The skill, I say, use this image prompts skill, and that's found in App Studio's BFFlist skills. And so this is very similar to a developer skill environment where it's loading that content at runtime based on whether it thinks it's relevant or not. So if we go and look at my app, I have Apps, Studio, BFFlist skills, and I have two skills in here that you saw on our back end here, and I've only have one selected. I'm saying this is the only one I want actually like enabled. Now it's not always going to call it. It'll only call it if it thinks it should call it. But here's where I define the skill. And so in the skill, I'm giving it direction and styling. So in here I say it's for tutorials, walkthrough, or explainers, use the retro blueprint. For watch me code, use modern dev tool. And I can update this as I want. And I tend to use the tutorial retro blueprint the most. But so here is the additional information for like what the styling of the retro blueprint looks like. And so now I get the same style with different content when I call that skill. And so let's go ahead and tell it to regenerate this video. Okay, use the tutorial style architecture design, but I want a darker background for this one. So this should apply my change, this request to that skill. and we'll see what the prompt comes out as. Okay, so here's the prompt that it created, and if we come and go back and look at our skill, we have our draft. We can look at what came in, and so basically the request body, here's my prompt that came in. Here's the title, here's the script. All right, what's up? Cool intro. Not really. So it has all this really great content to create the prompt. That's besides the point of the skill. What I really want to show is that in the AI handler, we can see that it actually invoked the skill. It has a tool call here for the skill. So if you zooming in a bit so it's easier to see. So here's the trace of, here's the content. That's the response that got back, but it's got like the full input system. You write a single image generation prompt here's the additional info from the user. It had my tool call. So it gets all this really great information. And on top of that, loads my skill, which means I don't have to every time tell it what the design of, the style of my thumbnails are. So then if I go ahead and let's see how I'm not going to read this whole skill. I'm just going to generate the image and see how it changes. Now, in this case, it's calling replicate nano banana to actually generate this image. There it is. So almost the exact same image. I like this. It's a black background now, and so that's really cool. I get a different color background because I gave it this. Use the skill to generate that theme. If I were to turn off the skill, it would have a completely different, feel or look whatsoever. So not going to go into too much detail there, but I find that skills in general are just a really great way to give your LLM model really relevant context and not have to repeat yourself. So highly recommend using skills both from as you're developing software, as well as if you're using BFFless, you can use skills inside of your pipeline with the AI chat functionality, which is awesome. Last thing I'm going to touch on is MCP Server, just because I use it all the time. It's slightly related to skills, and the skills know how to use the MCP Server. If you go over to the docs, we have under features, MCP Server. All the information is here on how to set it up, but you just need to copy this little code for Claude. I mean, it's going to be this is the basic MCP JSON that any LLM will use or harness will use to call the LLM. But by calling Claude MCP add with your BFFlist domain, it will create that connection. So I'm just going to do that really quick. And let's go back to here, and I'm going to open up a new tab, and we'll open up VS Code. All right, so just open up a new file, and here I'm going to add my an example toshimoto.dev. I'm going to add my admin for a dev site that I have. And let's go back and look at that backend. So if we go back here and we go log into my admin, I can go create a user or go create an MCP API key. And so I'm just going to throw away because I'm going to delete this when I'm done. So throw away, create global key. So any project in this admin in this Toshimoto site would have that. All right, so jumping back to Firefox. All right, so now I'm going to paste my API key, and this way I can install this. I can just by running the command. And so now it installed in my Claude JSON it as a project under this project for my MCP server. So now when I go into, let me show you my terminal. So now when I go into Claude at this project level, I can do MCP. Can I make this bigger? Yeah, that's easier to see. MCP, and it should list my MCP connections. As you can see, it's got my MCP connections, and I can view all my tools. I can say list projects, and I can say list projects in BFFless. And what that is going to do is that's going to, let's see how many projects it finds, and then we'll go look in the back end. It's calling the API. It knows how to get this information out. Do you want to call this projects? And it's just showing one project, app test. And so just to sort of go verify that, what it is we're actually looking at, if we go now looking at our projects, app test, and this is the project. So in short, in summary, using skills along with an MCP server to make those API requests, connections to update your backend is a very valuable tool. They both are very valuable tools, and I highly recommend using skills for everything you're doing, but also using BFFlist skills and MCP server when using BFFlist.